On that damp October day in 2023, when thick fog wrapped the slopes of the mountains in Guizhou province, a group of 5 professional divers stood at the entrance to the flooded Black Well mine shaft. The air was heavy with the smell of wet earth and rust. Tom Harper, a 45-year-old American with 20 years of cave diving experience, adjusted the straps of his dry chute and looked at the others. Next to him stood Li Wei, a local expert, a short Chinese man whose face was deeply lined from years of working in these mountains. He was smoking his last cigarette and silently nodding toward the dark mouth of the entrance. Anna Kovac, a Czech woman with an icy gaze and a reputation as the best cartographer of underwater systems, was checking her rebreather, her fingers moving quickly and confidently. Mark Smith, an Australian communications technician, had already unrolled the reel with the guideline rope, while Dmitry Ivanov, a Russian diver with experience in Siberian lakes, was silently fastening his helmet. They had not come here for adventure. Officially, they were hired by a Chinese company that wanted to assess the possibility of draining and redeveloping the mine. Unofficially, because the rumors about the Black Well would not leave them alone. In 2005, underground waters broke through here, and 327 miners disappeared in a matter of minutes. Not a single body was ever recovered. The shaft was simply flooded and sealed. Tom switched on the light on his helmet, and a bright beam cut through the grey fog. The water at the entrance was black as oil, and cold steam rose from it. "Everyone ready?" "Communication check," he said into the microphone, and his voice sounded muffled under the mask. One by one they answered, "Clear, online, ready." Li Wei threw his cigarette but into a puddle and was the first to step into the water up to his waist. "It's deep here," he warned in English with a strong accent. "The main shaft goes down 200 meters. Then there are horizontal drifts. Stay close to the line. And don't listen if you hear anything." No one asked what he meant. They knew the story. The descent began slowly, almost ritually. Tom was the first to dive into the vertical shaft, feeling the cold water instantly wrap around his body through the neoprene. The regulator hissed, the first breath tasted metallic, and bubbles rushed upward noisily, reflecting off the shaft walls. The helmet light and the powerful handheld torch in his hand illuminated only 1 meter ahead. The water was thick with silt and fine particles, like dirty milk. He descended vertically, holding onto the guideline rope that Mark had secured above. His heart beat steadily, but in his ears there was already that special underwater hum, a mixture of his own breathing and the silence that pressed on his eardrums. The depth gauge on his wrist showed 20 meters. 30. The walls were slippery, covered with a layer of black sediment, and sometimes the flashlight beam caught old wooden supports, rotten and overgrown with algae. At 50 meters the water became even colder, only 4 degrees, and Tom felt his fingers inside the gloves starting to go numb. Anna followed him, her breathing calm and steady in the headphones. "Visibility 1 meter, she reported. "But the walls are clean. Strangely clean for an abandoned mine." Tom did not answer right away. He had noticed it too. At the bottom of the shaft, where they finally reached the horizontal level at 80 meters, old mine carts lay there, but the rails beneath them shone as if they had been polished only yesterday. Next to them lay a miner's helmet, bright yellow, without a single spot of rust. Tom reached out and touched it. The metal was warm. Warm in the icy water. "Lee, you said no one had been here since 2005, he asked. Lee replied after a pause, "No one. I sealed the entrance myself." They moved into the main drift, narrow, only 2 meters high, with a low ceiling that forced them to bend slightly. The rope unspooled behind Mark with a quiet metallic rustle. The beams of their flashlights danced across the walls, revealing rusty scraps of clothing, broken lamps. But the farther they swam, the more often they encountered things that should not have looked like this. A clean aluminum mug stood on a ledge as if someone had just placed it there after tea. Inside, not a drop of sediment. Dmitry, swimming last, suddenly stopped. "Guys," the rope jerked. Twice, like someone pulled it from the other side. Everyone froze. Breathing in the headphones grew louder. Tom checked his end of the rope. It was securely fastened. "Just the current," he said, but his voice sounded uncertain. "Continue." The tension grew slowly, like the cold creeping under the chute. They had been swimming for an hour already, going deeper into the labyrinth of side workings. Visibility sometimes improved to 3 meters, then dropped to 0 when someone accidentally stirred the bottom and raised a cloud of silt. In those moments, the world turned into black emptiness, where the only reference point was the rope in the hand and one's own breathing. Tom felt the space pressing on him. Claustrophobia crept up quietly. The low ceiling, walls half a meter from his shoulders, water that did not let him rise but only pressed him to the bottom. "Do you hear that?" Anna suddenly whispered. Everyone fell silent. In the headphones came a faint, distant sound, like someone knocking metal on metal. Once, twice, 3 times. Then silence. "It's just an echo of our movements," Mark tried to calm them, but no one believed him. The sound was not coming from above. It was coming from the depths, from the drifts they had not yet entered. Li Wei, swimming ahead of Tom, suddenly raised his hand. His flashlight froze on something ahead. In the murky water hung an old miner's lamp, a carbide one, with intact glass. It was burning, with a weak yellow flame, although the carbide should have run out long ago. "This is impossible," Lee exhaled. Tom swam closer. The flame was real. He could feel the warmth even through the water. And at that moment they all felt it at once, the gaze. Not one, many, as if hundreds of eyes were watching them from the darkness beyond the flashlight beams. Unblinking, patient, waiting. Tom shook his head, trying to dispel the illusion. "Continue. We need to go another 200 meters to the main hall." But inside him a chill had already settled, one that had nothing to do with the water temperature. They kept moving, and the strangeness multiplied. On the walls appeared charcoal inscriptions, fresh, as if made yesterday. "They are waiting." In Chinese. Lee read them aloud and fell silent. Mark laughed nervously. "Some local teenagers got in here before us." But teenagers do not dive to 80 meters with equipment worth $10,000. Dmitri suddenly grabbed Tom's arm. "My tank. The pressure is dropping faster than it should," as if someone opened the valve. They checked. Everything was sealed. But the air was leaving. Faster than with the others. Time stretched. The watches on their wrists showed they had been underwater for 2 hours already, but it felt like an eternity. The drift narrowed, and now they swam in single file, almost touching each other's fins. The flashlight beams illuminated only the backs ahead. And suddenly, a sharp jerk. The rope tugged hard, 3 times in a row. Anna cried out over the comms. "Something grabbed my fin. I feel a hand." Tom turned, but saw only murk. "Anna, back to the rope." She answered, but her voice was distorted. They are here, watching." The connection broke for a second. When the sound returned, Anna was breathing heavily. "Nothing. Just my imagination. It was only silt." But no one believed her. They reached the large hall, a huge cavern where the ceiling had once collapsed and water had filled a space the size of a cathedral. Here visibility was slightly better, about 4 meters, and the flashlights could finally illuminate something more. Bodies lay on the bottom. Many. Skeletons in minor uniforms overgrown with algae. But some were intact. Skin pale like that of drowned men, but eyes open. And they were looking up. At the divers. Tom felt his stomach tighten. "Don't get too close," he whispered. But Lee was already swimming forward. "These are my people. I knew some of them." One of the bodies slowly turned its head. Not like a corpse, like a living person, and smiled. The smile was too wide, the teeth black. Panic flared instantly. Dmitri shouted, "Back! Back along the rope!" But the rope was gone. It had disappeared. Only a torn end remained in Mark's hand. Someone cut it. Mark thrashed in the water, his flashlight swinging wildly. At that moment Anna's light went out completely. She was left in darkness. "I can't see anything. Help!" Tom rushed toward her, but in the murky water he lost direction. The world turned into a black whirlpool. He heard only his own heavy breathing and the screams in the headphones. Then silence. Anna fell silent. Her signal disappeared. They lost orientation. Tom swam blindly, his flashlight beam catching only particles of silt swirling in the water like snow in a blizzard. His heart pounded so hard it echoed in his ears. He bumped into walls, into debris, into something soft that could have been a body. "Lee, Mark, Dmitri," he called. Only Lee answered, his voice trembling. "Tom, they are waiting. I see them. They look like us, but they are not us." Then Lee fell silent too. Mark managed to shout something about eyes in the water, and then came a sound that made Tom's hair stand on end even underwater, a quiet, bubbling laugh. Not human. Tom swam on, not knowing where. He had 20 minutes of air left. He activated the emergency beacon, but he understood that they might not hear him on the surface. The water pressed from all sides. The tunnel seemed endless, every turn leading to a new nightmare. He bumped into Dmitri, who was floating face down, mask torn off, eyes wide open but empty. Tom did not check for a pulse. He simply swam on, feeling that something was following him. Not swimming. Following. Like a shadow breathing down the back of his neck. Suddenly he broke into the vertical shaft. Ascent. His lungs burned. He rose faster than he should have, risking decompression sickness, but fear was stronger. On the surface, rescuers were waiting for him, locals who had been called by satellite phone even before the dive. Tom broke through the water, tore off his mask and coughed violently. Rain lashed his face. "Where are the others?" he shouted. But the rescuers only exchanged glances. They lowered ropes but found only fragments. And a camera. Dmitri's helmet camera, which by some miracle had caught on the supports near the entrance. Later, in the hospital, when Tom came to after barotrauma, they showed him the recording. The camera had worked until the very end. At first, ordinary footage of the dive. Then the strangeness began. And in the final minutes, in the hall with the bodies, the camera showed figures rising from the bottom. Not swimming. Standing up. Slowly. Their faces were the faces of the missing miners, but their eyes were black, without whites. They looked straight into the lens. And smiled. One of them, an exact copy of Li Wei, swam closer and whispered something in Chinese. The translator later said, "Now you are with us. We were waiting." And behind them, in the darkness, silhouettes were visible. Many. They were watching. Patiently. Waiting. Tom was discharged after a week. The mine was sealed again, this time with concrete and warning signs. But sometimes at night he wakes up to the sound of dripping water and distant metal knocking. And on his phone, messages still arrive from an unknown number, short videos. Dark water. And in it, faces. The faces of his team. They smile and wave. "Join us," they whisper. "We are here. We are waiting." Tom deletes them every time. But they keep coming. And in the mountains of Guizhou, near the entrance to the Black Well, sometimes at night a faint sound of bubbles rising from underground can be heard. As if someone is still breathing down there. And waiting. Waiting for the next group. For the next ones who will decide to descend. Because they are always watching. And they are always waiting.